Experts are warning that a trade war between Canada and the U.S. could drive up costs for consumers. But just how much will our supply chain be impacted? Here to discuss, Sam Lampropoulos, a supply chain and logistics professor with George Brown College. Thanks so much for joining us, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Melanie.
All right, a lot of people are watching the news. They are watching the headlines. And at the end of the day, they're saying, is this going to cost me anything? So let's break this down. Give us an idea of which industries do you think would be hardest hit if these tariffs, these 25% tariffs that are placed on Canadian goods, goes through?
I think definitely the automotive industry will be impacted because there's a lot of parts, components, sub-assemblies that are crossing the border both ways. And so that's definitely an affected area. But I think for most Canadians, the biggest issue may be around food and food prices. And if I just can elaborate a little bit on that, Canada exports a lot of wheat, pork, and canola into the U.S., and then U.S. manufacturers, in turn, sell us back baked goods, processed meat, salad dressings, and those type of products. So when these products are being imported back into Canada through retailers such as Loblaws and Metro, we're going to see increased costs of goods sold from those organizations. And typically, because profit margins are very slim on grocery items, that cost will be passed on directly to the consumer. So if we look at a product such as cereal, for example, a box of cereal that may have cost $5 pre-tariff might end up costing over $6 at the grocery store.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but in its entirety, when you add up your grocery bill, that really does add up. And that's just one example. As you said, like that's just cereal. If you're getting, for a family of 6, that's going to really tally up. Right now, no doubt, a bunch of companies are watching very closely, trying to figure out how to alter things. Could we see the prices going up before this potential February 1st?
I don't believe so, but I do believe shortly after the tariff takes into effect, we'll see some pressure on prices. What businesses are doing beforehand, or they may not be making investments in increasing their plant capacity or hiring workers. So that's normally the types of activities we'll see not pre-tariff. But once the tariffs hit shortly thereafter, we should see the impact on prices.
How nervous are you, Sam, when you hear these conversations on how big of an impact this is going to have across the board? From your experience, you have a long resume. You have worked with grocers like Loblaws, so you have the firsthand experience. How concerned should people be?
I think there is initial concern for some of the products that are affected. However, the bigger issue is if Canada decides to retaliate, and then that's when we're going to see new tariffs on imports from the U.S. And so that's going to create more of a spin-off effect and more tariffs, more costs. So if we limit it just to tariffs based on the U.S. tariffs and not having any retaliation, that'll contain it to a degree, but it will spin out of control if there is retaliation.
Another concern would be perhaps shortages when it comes to certain items. Do you see that being an issue?
Absolutely, because once we have these external shocks, and we've seen these in the past with the pandemic or a tariff, which we may experience, the supply chain needs to regroup and reorganize to take into account these different issues. And so one of the things we'll start seeing is some delays, product shortages, as companies look to source from other suppliers, maybe from other countries, due to the impact of the tariffs.
During this interview, I caught you saying pandemic because it feels very similar. It feels very similar to what we saw. Let's just use the grocery store as an example. Shortages on certain items, prices jacked up high. I don't think anyone wants to see what we saw, obviously, to a different degree. But indeed, these are things that we should be aware of that could be coming. We'll have to wait and see for that February 1st, but indeed, there are probably plans in place. Let's talk again. Sam Lampropoulos with George Brown. Appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, Melanie.